Hello everyone, Santa here with more Let's Make a Game Astral Collision. We're on the warehouse because, why not? So I got, because we're going to be instantly talking about other things, I got a little bit more done with our good ol' Kendrin rulers. I got Queen Kendara III. The daughter of Ulfons IV, Kendara was not especially fond of ruling. She wasn't incompetent, but she only endeavored to keep things going and perpetuated the status quo. As soon as her son, Nalandon, was capable enough in her eyes, she abdicated rule to him, using an easily forgotten part of the ancient rules of succession. We got a couple of people here who didn't like being ruler. The son of Kendira III, Nalandon was a huge supporter of the Adventurers Guild, having grown up hearing tales of its exploits. It was he who took Sir Lionel from being a significant figure of the Adventurers Guild to a revered figure for the entire kingdom, at least in terms of things like honors and statuary. The process had begun before him. He also began requiring new royal knights to have graduated from the Sir Lionel Academy, where a specific program was instituted for that purpose. Additionally, Traveler's Rest, later Traveler Rest, was founded during his reign. The other guilds continued to decline under his reign. So the non-Adventurers Guild ones. Ona III, a daughter of Nalandon, though not his eldest children. Those were members of high-profile adventuring teams, and not interested in leaving those for rule. In other words, they wanted to stay as adventure teams. She was a competent ruler, but often relied on finding typos, but often relied on the advice of her elder siblings, further increasing the power of the guild relative to the crown. The other guilds were absorbed into the Adventurers Guild during her reign. Many of the civilian-oriented aspects of those guilds remained as ungilded efforts, local blacksmiths and the like. Queen Lister III, the daughter of Ona III, Lister III ended up having little interest in ruling. She slowly began abdicating responsibility to her daughter Hilkenda, who, by the end of Listra's reign, was queen in all but name. When it was pointed out to Listra that she could simply transfer the queenship to her daughter, she did so happily, before returning to her preferred interests of gardening. Indeed, she spent much of her time working in the gardens surrounding Sir Lionel's shrine in Lionelholm. I have to figure out why these people have 12 and 13-year reigns, so I'm figuring out reasons why, particularly if the reign before them is not super long. Like, a 61-year reign makes sense for the follow-up reign to be somewhat shorter, right? But a 13-year reign following a 34-year reign, not as much. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and mark this as the location we got through. I think I used this yellow, actually. And the note here, I can just delete this note from this one and add it here. So you'll notice, by the way, that this is not nearly as many as last time. There's a good reason for that, which is that I kind of fatigued of making them. And so I decided to work on something else. These are really tricky to kind of figure out. I'm working on a process for getting through them. I have a lot more to go through. I'm not going to do this. Basically, for the other areas, each one's going to have its own style of world building, and I'm not going to handle all of them in this exact same way. But this one here, this is how I'm doing it. I'm learning maybe I don't want to do this sort of thing again because it is very tedious and time-consuming. And maybe if I do it, it'll involve a much smaller pool of rulers. I'm definitely going to want to think carefully about how I'm handling. What's the name of it? I'm blanking on it. It's not Evanshire. It's whatever. The southwestern island. Down here. And for some reason, I'm blanking on the name. Oh, thank you, Steam. But anyway, yeah, why am I blanking on that name? Whatever. You know what? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, self. It doesn't matter. I feel compelled. To remind myself what that one's called. You know what? General lore. General lore will tell us. No, Ron Pides. Sacriton. Good old Sacriton, that's it. Okay. But anyway, Sacriton, Sacchartin has a huge thing with their rulers too, but I'm probably going to handle it very differently. I'll probably make it a little bit more dynasty-oriented, or kind of focus it on that regard, and kind of look at trends rather than specific rulers in the same sort of way that I'm handling this here. Part of what I'm doing with this too is I'm just learning about world building. Like, I've had ideas about it, but there's a huge difference between having ideas about how something can look as a finished product and figuring out how to make a finished product. And so each area is probably going to have a slightly different approach that I take to doing the world building, just that way I can learn. Learn from the process, learn what works, what doesn't work, and what sort of things I can do. Now, in terms of other things that have happened, there's a couple of other things to talk about. One of them is Traveler Rest now has the ability to go into it. So let's hop over there. So we have Traveler Rest now. Substantially filled out compared to what it had been. There's going to be catacombs for travelers back here. So these are old adventurers catacombs. And then there's the inn. This is the guild hall area. A bunch of residential houses. This is a warehouse. There's lots of warehouses around. They just need to store foodstuffs. You really want to have a stock of food in case the monsters block the roads too much and things like that, and it takes a while to clear them. And then, of course, there's mountains on the side and the ocean on the other side. This is a very nice, somewhat safe location, like, relatively speaking. And then we have all of the homes. They all have random objects in them. These random objects, except for this one, these random objects, like sections of bed mostly and some tables, were just to help me to be able to identify them, to make sure that all of these connections were done correctly. I put them all on the same map. The map is overly huge compared to what it needs to be to hold these homes. But I ain't rearranging it, and I don't mind having a bunch of empty space. And this will... The important thing here of having the homes scattered like this, there's some arrangement here to have them semi-mimic the positions on the world map, just to help keep it in my head which one's where. But the advantage of this is that I make fewer maps, which is really important because there's a map cap in the editor of 999 maps, and this is at 110. And I have 14 world regions to make. So, yeah, I need to be a little bit more conservative in my number of maps. Technically, the engine doesn't care how many maps you have, as far as I understand it, but the editor only supports 999, and trying to shuffle stuff around and juggle it that way, it's just, yeah, let's not worry about that nightmare. So, yeah, I want to be conservative on the number of maps I'm taking up to make small houses like this. Then there's the inn. The inn is on its own map. I don't know if I should... Like, if I really need to, and I'm running out of maps, I can start doing stuff where I'm putting all of the residences on one enormous map, because I can make a map fairly good-sized, or at least multiple residences across multiple towns on one map, and I can put all of the inns in the same map, for example, all of the guild halls and that sort of stuff. So there's a lot that I can do to optimize it. This inn is pretty straightforward and simple. This is a clock, for anybody who was wondering. And the catacombs is just an empty map, placeholder map right now. But yeah, a lot of time went into making this actually have visuals and all that. We can wander there in-game, I suppose. But let's talk first about another feature before we hop in engine. And that is an update to the day-night cycle. Hooray. So if we open up the day-night cycle thing here, you'll notice right here, it's probably a little small, but there's a transition common event, which is currently set to 21. So what this is about is I realized, and I think I talked about this a little while back, but I realized that I had a significant problem. That significant problem was that when time of day changes, NPCs can just appear and disappear just in front of the player. That's not great. So I think I talked about this a little while back, but I basically had two ideas of how to solve it, one of which I called the Ocarina of Time solution, i.e. time stands still in places where NPCs are specific. So, for example, the time would not naturally advance while you are, say, in a town, like an Ocarina of Time. If you're in Kakariko, time doesn't move. If you're in Market Town, time doesn't move. But if you're out in the field, time moves. I don't like that solution. One of the big reasons why I don't like that solution is because what happened, like, time moves faster outside of towns than inside of towns, and I want time to be able to advance while you're walking in towns, because then like the length of the daylight period is properly aligned and all that sort of stuff. So it's really important to me that I don't do a clumsy solution. Like, clumsy is not to denigrate Ocarina of Time. I think that they did I think it was an appropriate solution to their game, but it'd be a very clumsy solution for this one. And so I wanted a different solution. The other idea I had was the Majora's Mask solution. Majora's Mask could not use the Ocarina of Time solution because they needed time to always be moving. They couldn't stop time from moving. And I kind of feel a similar way. Now, I could do the Ocarina of Time solution, but there's a lot of ways where it doesn't quite work the way that I'd want it to. So rather than try to do that solution, I wanted to do a different one. And so the Majora's Mask solution, their solution, was to basically have cutscene effects, because like they do have NPCs suddenly appear and disappear and all sorts of transitions to things that just kind of happen instantly. And so they disguise it with cutscenes that are fairly minimal if you're out in like a dungeon or something, but if you're in town, it's got this whole cinematic and stuff. So the way that I could solve this then is to set up some sort of transition cinematic effect, sort of a transition effect. When I detect that it is time to adjust the day-night cycle, I want to transition time. But I need a couple of things in order to be able to do that. One of which is to change my day-night cycle code dramatically. So right here is where things used to happen. So let me blow this up so that way you can actually read it. So we have right here this game variables.setValue time of day index variable, and then it does the cycle, because morning is actually index 3 in the system, so this has to roll it over by 1 in order to get to set up where morning is 0, a day is 1, evening is 2, and night is 3, instead of being all like plus 1-ish, like day was 0 originally, so everything was shifted around. So a lot of these were like -1, and then morning was like +4. So that's what's going on here. Modulo just gets you the remainder of a division, so that makes it that way. When morning is pushed from 3 to 4, it gets the remainder of 4 divided by 4 is 0, and then we get our 0 index. Modulo is very useful for doing constrained indices like this, because like I said, it's the remainder of a division problem. So anyway, this used to just be sitting out here and just like is always set whenever time is advancing, but now it's part of the cycle changed thing because I need to have control of it. So if time of day transition is active, which is a map specific thing because not all maps do it. Where do I have? It's a really simple function. Yeah, right here. It just checks, does this map data have transition? And it's meta. If it does, we return true. Otherwise, we return false. And I copied and pasted this from locale. No transition there. Now it says no transition. Anyway, we use that function to get whether or not we're supposed to transition. Where is this? Yeah, right here. If we are supposed to transition, then we set the transition time of day target to the current cycle, or the cycle that we're going to. And we do this code that I got from a different plugin that I'm using that I didn't write. The KATH game over handling plugin that intercepts game over and is how I redirect it to respawning you at monuments. So that's just another plugin that I'm using. And so like apparently this is like, okay, now this sets it to do a common event. Cool, that does what I need it to then. And this works. It properly sets it up. So I don't know if it. Yeah, I assume this is just a game variable the thing has. If we don't have the time of day transition active, then it just does the normal thing it did before. It will update the cycle, change the tinting, and all that stuff. But if we do have the time of day transition active, then we do these things. This does not actually change the time of day, you'll notice. This just calls a common event that's supposed to change the time of day using the transition, which is going to need this function, change time of day for transition. And this is a function that's basically this code right here, except instead of cycle, it uses the transition time of day target that gets set right here. So this grabs the transition time of day target. It does that adjustment. It sets the switch for the cycle changed. It gets the locale and checks, hey, do we have a locale? If so, we set the tint to be whatever the tint for this time of day is. We update the night switch. Is it nighttime or not? If it's nighttime, the night switch is on. Otherwise, it's off. And we set the time of day index variable as well. So that gets adjusted by this function. This function is not called in this code. So let's talk about the event, the common event. It's going to be small again, but here we are. So time of day transition. If the transition time of day target is 0, then the target is day. We set a picture to show, and we play a bell sound. Now, this picture doesn't have any, its opacity is 0. Just for clarification, this is what it does, and it uses this image here. I spent time making images. I think they're decent, at least. I'll show them better in a moment. Probably in-game. I'll show them better in-game. But we have one for time of day, one for evening, night, and morning. So it just sets the appropriate thing and plays a sound effect. This bell, for reference, is this. So it uses that bell in a couple of spots. It uses the wolf. I said, when it turns to night. There is not a rooster crowing sound effect that I've been able to find inside this, and I just haven't bothered trying to find one elsewhere that I can use for free. I'm sure that they exist, but for now, placeholder that when it turns to morning. I'm not set on these sound effects. I talked with my sister some about it, and she suggested having a little musical cue, but I have to figure out that. None of the built-in musical effects is at all appropriate for this. So so the important thing about this is this runs and you can't like move around or other things while this is happening. It kind of holds things static because it's not parallel. It's just running. So it makes the picture fade in over 5 frames, which is very quick. Makes the time of day transition happen. Waits 60 frames. I might actually adjust this a little bit. To be 30 frames on either side, but this waits a second. There, it'll be a little bit more balanced or something. And then it fades the picture out over 60 frames, so it takes a second to fade out. And then I erase the picture, obviously. So that's the transition event. This is what ends up happening. Obviously, this uses a lot of my knowledge of the script in order to be able to function, because I just grabbed this variable to determine which one I'm going to. I originally had it check what is the current index, but that is trying to predict which one it should go to based upon which one it's at, and if that's not the next one. So, for example, if you sat at a fireplace and you went to the next time of day, or you went to a different time of day than the one that's immediately next, it would play the one for the time of day that would follow the time of day that you're in. So, for example, and that's confusing. So, for example, if it's daytime and you told it to go to morning, it would show the graphic for evening, because that would be the next one after day. But then it'd still become morning. It would just have shown the wrong, like, what time of day it is now, transition graphics. So, this is not, by the way, 100% like where it needs to be, but I feel like this is like close enough to be good for now, and I can tighten it up later. And tweak the values. I feel like they're in a roughly okay spot. Actually, if I go to, this is the asset manager, right? I think, yeah. So if I go into pictures, I should be able to show you, yeah, preview. So this is, unfortunately, it's not quite full-sized, but you can see this is the day image. I made all of these in Affinity Photo, by the way, for anybody who's wondering. And I'm using Kaushan Script for my font, which is just the font that I typically use for a lot of stuff. It's a free font on Google Fonts, for anybody who's curious. Evening looks like this. I'm particularly happy about the bloom effects that I painted in there. I think they do a lot to kind of give it some additional oomph. Not 100% certain on this one. With the sun, I suspect I need to darken the clouds a little bit. I might tweak it some more in the future, but I like the overall gist of it. Morning is this guy. So very stylized. I might try to make it a little bit smoother at some point. It's very rough in terms of its textures, but overall I like it. And then night is very intense. So here's night. And you can see a very strong moon, heavily stylized sort of effect going on. I like the way the night text here looks. So yeah, those are those graphics. I would consider myself to be a kind of a beginner artist in many regards. So I'm fairly pleased with those. So yeah, let's go ahead and just wander around in game a little bit. So right now, most areas do not have the transition effect applied to them. I need to go into a bunch of the maps and just like add the line that says transition on or whatever. So like this, transition on or true or anything that's not like false and non-existent. Okay. So I have these guys chilling here because this has the transition. I'm curious, actually. I've tested it using code. I haven't tested it using fireplaces. Let's rest until morning. Okay. Obviously, I need to change how that interacts with things because it doesn't do it well. So just going to show you what things should look like. If you hit F12, it brings up our good old debug menu. I'm just going to stick it off the side of the screen here a little bit. Now I have this handy dandy function that allows me to be able to tell it to advance the cycle somewhere. So let's just go to day. There's day. Sure, we will transition to evening. And then night, and you'll notice a lot of these NPCs will vanish. Like that. And that's why I need it to do that. And then we go back to morning. And these NPCs are now here. So I need it to do that sort of thing to hide them. But that's what the transition effect looks like in-game. I wonder, with so few adventurers around as of late, should I commission the carver here to make me a weapon of some kind? But if I did that, I wouldn't know how to use it properly. Bah, where did all the adventurers go anyway? I have started work on a quest. That's not the warehouse. This is the warehouse. I have started work on a quest here. To do finish. He wants 100 oranges. He'll give you 30 bounty slips for 100 oranges, which means that you are making money on buying oranges in terms of refund on bounty slips if you are rank 3. Above that, you are losing money. I did the math. That's how I selected the values. But you'll notice time of day just transitioned there, and we didn't get the transition effect because it's non-existent. But now if night were to end, so yeah, we can go in houses here. Not a whole lot to say about that, quite frankly. Here's the inn. I could sleep here at the inn. Yes. Hooray, it's morning. And you'll notice that did not play the transition effect. But out here it will, if I wander around here enough. Here's the dock. If you've rented the boat, the dock should show up here, I think. Oh, it's daytime now. So that's what the transition is kind of like when you're just wandering around. Just suddenly interrupts you to dong in daytime or something. Maybe I should have chosen my words a little more carefully. Whatever. And yeah, a bunch of these residences are, like, they have areas, they connect properly. That's the important thing. So, that's a lot of what's happened. It's the sort of thing where a lot of it is stuff that takes more effort to do than to look at. I'll just go over the orange quest briefly. I have made the item for it. Orange delivery. Caledon warehouse supervisor. Reward 30 bounty slips. Caledon's supply of oranges has gotten low. The supervisor of the warehouse there would like 100 oranges to stock things up. He doesn't care where they come from, but did suggest checking out Sycamore's Farmer's Market, which is open in the mornings. So that's what that quest is going to do. But it's not in a state to like test it or anything yet. It's just it's a work in progress. So yeah, I think that about covers things here, quite frankly. This guy needs to have his thing, and he's not there at night. He's only there during the day. So this quest marker only shows up during the day. Yep. So that's that. I think that about covers it. So my current goals in general, by the way, for the project, in terms of like what I'm immediately working on, is I want to get more NPCs filled out into the world, and I want to get more of the lore made. And it'll just be a process of doing stuff until I've gotten things more fleshed out. There's a lot of stuff to make, and I've kind of signed myself up for a lot. I will say that I do keep having this internal struggle of like wanting to just say, oh, never mind all of this work, let me do something simpler. But whenever I try to do something that I think is simpler, I always find some way to make it overly complicated anyway. And there have been many projects that have sunk to excessive lore costs, or what seemed like excessive lore costs anyway, or other like technical issues and things like that. So part of me wants to make like a game that doesn't care about the world building at all and just focuses on the story of some characters, and just like, okay, whatever, this world is ridiculous, and then everybody just rolls with it, kind of like Saints Row does to some extent now that I think about it. I enjoy some amount of it where the absurdity is in the situation. But you know what? This project is something that I decided I was going to finish, and I'm going to stick to it, and I'm going to get it done, even if I'm feeling a little frustrated with it or a little sick of making lore, but just means it's a good chance for me to learn how to make lore better. And that's something I want to do, because lore is cool, and I like lore. So anyway, I think that's going to go ahead and wrap stuff up for me here, back in the warehouse, because that's where I'm working. Making dialogue. One of the other things that I want to get more practiced in is character voice, which is an argument for making an RPG that focuses more on individual characters to like practice character voice better. Just those different writing skills, those different things that I want to get better at long term. But there's a lot of game to make here, and I want to try to get it done eventually at some point. So until next time, everyone, thank you all very much for watching, and take care, and goodbye.